A young beggar crashes a millionaire's engagement party with an unexpected shout. "She only wants your money," while pointing at the bride-to-be. The entire room falls silent, and the man is left in shock. What he decides to do next will leave you stunned. The late afternoon sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Edward Montgomery's study, illuminating the distinguished businessman's silver hair as he adjusted his bow tie in front of an antique mirror. At 65, his face carried the dignified lines of experience, but his eyes sparkled with renewed vitality. Tonight was more than just another social gathering. It was the official announcement of his engagement to Catherine Wells, the woman who had unexpectedly brought love back into his life. "Everything must be perfect," he murmured, smoothing down his tailored tuxedo. The engagement party would bring together Boston's elite, and Edward had spared no expense. The Montgomery mansion, normally quiet and reserved, had been transformed into a showcase of opulence, with crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across marble floors and exotic flower arrangements perfuming the air. In the adjacent room, Catherine was putting the finishing touches on her appearance. At 30, she embodied grace and sophistication, her honey-blonde hair styled in elegant waves that cascaded down her shoulders. The emerald silk gown she wore had been specially designed for the occasion, its color matching the engagement ring that now adorned her finger, a family heirloom that had once belonged to Edward's late wife. "You look stunning, my dear," Edward said, appearing in the doorway. Catherine turned, favoring him with the radiant smile that had first captured his heart 6 months ago at the charity gala where they met. "And you look incredibly handsome," she replied, crossing the room to straighten his bow tie. Her touch was gentle, practiced. "Are you nervous about tonight?" Edward caught her hand in his, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "With you by my side?" "Never." The sound of cars pulling up the circular driveway signaled the arrival of the first guests. Edward's butler, Harrison, who had served the family for 3 decades, appeared with characteristic timing. "Sir, the guests are beginning to arrive." "Thank you, Harrison." Edward offered his arm to Catherine. "Shall we, my love?" Together they descended the grand staircase as the first wave of guests entered the mansion. The great hall buzzed with admiration at the sight of the couple, the distinguished businessman and his captivating young fiancée. Edward couldn't help but feel pride as he watched Catherine charm everyone she encountered. She possessed a natural ability to make each person feel special, remembered, valued. The evening progressed like a well-orchestrated symphony. Champagne flowed freely, laughter filled the air, and the string quartet played sophisticated melodies that drifted through the rooms. Edward found himself surrounded by well-wishers, old friends, and business associates, all eager to congratulate him on finding happiness again after years of solitude following his wife's passing. "You've got yourself a real treasure there, Ed," remarked Richard Sterling, his oldest friend and business partner. "Catherine's brought back the light in your eyes." Edward nodded, watching as Catherine gracefully navigated through the crowd, stopping to chat with various guests. She had an uncanny ability to remember details about everyone she met, using that knowledge to make meaningful connections. It was one of the many qualities that had drawn him to her. The evening reached its pinnacle as Edward clinked his crystal champagne flute, gathering everyone's attention for the official announcement. Catherine glided to his side, her presence warming him like the sun. The assembled guests fell silent, anticipating the moment. "My dear friends and family," Edward began, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. After losing my beloved Sarah, I never thought I would find love again, but fate had other plans." He turned to Catherine, whose eyes glistened with emotion. "Catherine has brought joy and purpose back into my life, and tonight I am overjoyed to officially announce our engagement." Applause erupted through the hall, and Catherine leaned in to kiss Edward's cheek, a perfect picture of devotion. The photographer captured the moment, flash illuminating their happiness for posterity. As the applause died down and the string quartet resumed playing, Edward felt completely at peace. The years of loneliness seemed like a distant memory now. He had found love again, and soon he would have a new family to fill the empty halls of his mansion. But fate had one more surprise in store for the evening. As Edward raised his glass to take a sip of champagne, a commotion at the entrance caught his attention. The elegant murmur of conversation faltered, replaced by confused whispers. Standing in the doorway, illuminated by the crystal chandeliers, was a small figure that would change everything. A young girl, no more than 12 years old, stood in stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. Her simple cotton dress and worn shoes spoke of a life far removed from the luxury that filled the Montgomery mansion. Yet it wasn't her humble appearance that commanded attention. It was the fierce determination burning in her dark eyes. The security guards moved to intercept her, but the girl was quicker. She darted between them with the agility of youth, her long dark hair streaming behind her as she ran into the center of the great hall. The string quartet fell silent, their music replaced by the growing murmur of shocked guests. "Stop!" The Chase girl's voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the whispers. She pointed directly at Catherine, who had instinctively drawn closer to Edward. "She's lying to you. She doesn't love you. She only wants your money." The accusation hung in the air like shattered crystal. Edward felt Catherine stiffen beside him, her hand tightening on his arm. The gathered guests shifted uncomfortably, their expressions ranging from scandalized to intrigued. "I don't know who put you up to this," Catherine said, her voice trembling slightly, "but you shouldn't spread such horrible lies. Security, please remove this child." But the girl stood her ground, her chin lifted defiantly. "I'm not lying. My mother worked for you, Miss Wells. She knew what you really are, and before she—" The girl's voice caught for a moment before she steadied herself. "Before she left us, she made me promise to tell the truth." Edward studied the girl more closely. There was something hauntingly familiar about her features, something that tugged at his memory. Her eyes, in particular, seemed to hold shadows of the past he couldn't quite grasp. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. "This is ridiculous. Edward, darling, this poor child has clearly been manipulated by someone who wishes to harm our happiness. Perhaps one of your competitors." But Edward noticed something in Catherine's reaction, a flicker of recognition, quickly masked by indignation. She knew this girl, or at least knew of her. The realization sent a chill down his spine. "Young lady," Edward said, his voice gentle but firm. "What's your name?" "Sophia," she replied, her eyes never leaving Catherine's face. "Sophia Martinez." The name meant nothing to Edward, but he saw Catherine's face pale slightly. The reaction was subtle. Few would have noticed it, but Edward had spent his life reading people across negotiating tables. Something was very wrong. "Mr. Montgomery," Sophia continued, her voice smaller now but no less determined, "my mother told me things about Miss Wells, important things. She made me promise to warn you before it was too late." Harrison appeared at Edward's side, speaking in a low voice. "Sir, shall I have security escort the young lady out?" Edward raised his hand, silencing the butler. "No, Harrison, not yet." He turned to address his guests, summoning the commanding presence that had served him well in countless boardrooms. "My friends, please continue enjoying the evening. Harrison will show you to the garden terrace where we've prepared a special dessert service." The guests, recognizing the diplomatic dismissal, began filing out, though their curious glances and whispered conversations made it clear the evening's drama would fuel gossip for weeks to come. Soon, only Edward, Catherine, and Sophia remained in the great hall, along with 2 discreet security guards by the doors. "Edward, surely you don't intend to listen to these absurd accusations?" Catherine's voice held a note of desperation that he'd never heard before. "This child is clearly confused, or worse, being used by someone who means to harm us." But Edward's attention was fixed on Sophia. The girl's posture had changed now that the crowd was gone. Her shoulders slumped slightly, revealing the exhaustion and fear she'd been hiding beneath her brave facade. Yet her eyes remained steady, unflinching. "Sophia," Edward said gently, "you mentioned your mother. What was her name?" "Maria Martinez," Sophia replied. "She worked as a housekeeper for Miss Wells last year. She knew things, Mr. Montgomery. Important things. She tried to warn others, but nobody would listen. And then she—" Sophia's voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. The tension in Edward's study the following morning was palpable. He sat behind his mahogany desk, fingers steepled beneath his chin, lost in thought. The events of the previous evening played over and over in his mind, like a film he couldn't stop. Catherine had dismissed Sophia's accusations with practiced ease, attributing them to manipulation by business rivals. But something about the girl's unwavering conviction nagged at him. Through the window, he could see Catherine in the garden. Her phone pressed to her ear as she paced among the roses. Her normally composed demeanor showed signs of strain, a tightness in her shoulders, quick glances over her shoulder, hushed but intense conversation. It was a side of her he'd never seen before. Edward reached for his private phone, the one he used only for his most confidential business dealings. His fingers hovered over the keypad before dialing a number he hadn't used in years. "Marcus? It's Edward Montgomery. I need your services." The voice on the other end remained silent, waiting. "Yes, it's a delicate matter. Complete discretion is essential." Marcus Kane was more than just a private investigator. He was a master at uncovering truths that others had carefully buried. Edward had used his services only once before, during a crucial corporate takeover. Now he needed those skills for a far more personal matter. "I need everything you can find on Catherine Wells," Edward continued, his voice low despite being alone in his study. "And separately, I need information about Maria Martinez and her daughter Sophia. They may be connected." As he ended the call, Catherine entered the study, her face brightening with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Darling, I've been thinking about last night. Perhaps we should move up the wedding date. Why wait when we're so sure of our love?" Edward studied her carefully. The Catherine before him was perfectly put together. Designer dress, impeccable makeup, not a hair out of place. Yet something felt different. Had it always been there, this subtle calculation behind her warm expressions? "You seem eager," he responded neutrally. "Most brides want time to plan their perfect day." Catherine moved closer, perching on the edge of his desk. Her perfume, usually so alluring, now seemed somehow cloying. "I just don't want anything to come between us. That horrible scene last night, I worry that others might try to poison what we have." Edward took her hand, noting how her fingers trembled slightly despite her composed exterior. "Nothing can poison what's real, Catherine." She withdrew her hand as if burned, though her smile remained fixed. "Of course not, darling. I just think we should consider a more intimate ceremony, something sooner with just our closest friends." The suggestion raised red flags in Edward's mind. Catherine had always talked about a grand wedding, about showing the world their love. This sudden change felt calculated, defensive. "I have some business to attend to," he said, standing. "We can discuss the wedding details later." Once alone, Edward opened his safe and removed a file he hadn't touched in years. Inside were the details of his late wife's final days, including a list of her jewelry. Sarah had been meticulous about cataloging her possessions, intended to be future heirlooms for their grandchildren. One piece caught his eye, a distinctive silver locket with a unique filigree pattern. The same pattern he'd glimpsed around Sophia Martinez's neck. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "First results in, meeting needed, usual place, 1 hour." Edward grabbed his coat, his mind racing. In the hallway, he encountered Harrison, who had served the family long enough to read his employer's moods. "Sir, shall I inform Miss Wells if she asks about your whereabouts?" "Tell her I'm meeting with my lawyers about the wedding preparations," Edward replied, knowing the lie would please Catherine while giving him the time he needed. The drive to the small cafe where he traditionally met Marcus gave Edward time to think. He'd built his business empire on instinct as much as intelligence, and right now, every instinct was screaming that something was deeply wrong. The girl's accusations, Catherine's subtle changes in behavior, the locket, pieces of a puzzle he couldn't quite assemble. Marcus was already waiting in their usual corner booth, a manila envelope on the table before him. The investigator's weathered face was grim. "You're not going to like what I found, Mr. Montgomery," Marcus said without preamble. "Miss Wells isn't who she claims to be. Her real name is Catherine Winters, and she's been involved in several interesting situations with wealthy men over the past decade." Edward's heart sank as Marcus laid out surveillance photos, financial records, and court documents. The woman he loved had woven a web of lies so intricate he wondered if anything she'd told him was true. "There's more," Marcus continued, his voice grave. "About Maria Martinez. She didn't just work for Catherine. She discovered something. Something big enough that she tried to warn people. And then 3 months ago, Sofia Martinez sat on a worn couch in her modest apartment, clutching her mother's silver locket. The small living room was neat but sparse, with faded photographs on the walls telling the story of happier times. Across from her, Marcus Kane sat in an old armchair, his kind eyes fixed on the young girl as she shared her story. "Mum always wore this locket," Sophia explained, her fingers tracing the intricate filigree pattern. "She said it was given to her by someone special, someone who trusted her with an important secret. But she never told me who." Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Sophia, can you tell me what your mother discovered while working for Miss Wells?" The girl's eyes darted to the window, a habit she'd developed in recent months. Mom kept a diary. She wrote down everything she saw and heard. Strange meetings, late-night phone calls, documents she wasn't supposed to see. She said Miss Wells wasn't working alone. There was someone else, someone powerful pulling the strings. In his car parked outside, Edward listened through the wireless connection to Marcus's recording device. Each word from Sophia's mouth confirmed his worst fears while raising new questions. The locket around her neck was undoubtedly Sarah's. But how had Maria Martinez obtained it? Sophia's voice continued through the speaker. "The last time I saw Mum really scared, she was talking on the phone. She said, 'I won't let you do to him what you did to his son.' Then she hung up and cried for hours." Edward's blood ran cold. His son Thomas had passed away 5 years ago in what was ruled an accident. The official report cited a tragic car crash, but Edward had always felt something was amiss. Thomas had been investigating irregularities in one of their subsidiary companies before the incident. Meanwhile, at the Montgomery mansion, Catherine paced in her private sitting room, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously on her phone. The screen displayed a text message. "The girl is becoming a problem. Handle it, or I will." The sender's name was simply listed as J. Catherine's hands trembled as she deleted the message. This wasn't what she had signed up for. The plan had seemed simple at first: charm the wealthy widower, secure a quick marriage, and help orchestrate a takeover of his company. But Edward was different from her previous targets. His kindness, his genuine love for her, had awakened feelings she'd thought long buried. Back in the apartment, Sophia retrieved a leather-bound notebook from a hidden compartment in her mother's old sewing box. "Mom said if anything happened to her, I should give this to someone who could help. I think she meant you, Mr. Kane." Marcus carefully opened the diary, his experienced eyes scanning the neat handwriting. Names, dates, locations. Maria Martinez had been methodical in her documentation. But it was a photograph tucked between the pages that caught his attention. The image showed a much younger Edward Montgomery, standing with his late wife Sarah, their son Thomas, and a woman who looked remarkably like Sophia. "Sophia?" Marcus asked carefully. "Did your mother ever mention the Montgomery family before she worked for Miss Wells?" The girl's eyes widened in recognition as she looked at the photograph. That's my mom when she was young. She used to work at a summer house in Maine. She told me once that she met someone special there, but it made her sad to talk about it." Edward's heart nearly stopped as he studied the photograph through the tablet Marcus had connected to his camera. The woman's features, so similar to Sophia's, stirred memories of a summer romance Thomas had tried to keep secret. A romance his father had discouraged, believing it would complicate his son's future. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. The locket had been Sarah's gift to Thomas, who must have given it to Maria. Sophia's age, her familiar features. She wasn't just a random witness to Catherine's deception. She was Edward's granddaughter, the child Thomas never knew existed. Catherine's phone buzzed again, another message from Jay. "Meeting tonight. The usual place. Don't even think about backing out now." She stared at her reflection in the window, barely recognizing the person she had become. The guilt she'd been suppressing threatened to overwhelm her. Edward's love had begun to thaw her carefully constructed walls, making her question everything. But she was in too deep, trapped in a web of lies and manipulation orchestrated by someone far more dangerous than herself. The main summer house stood unchanged by time, its weathered shingles and wraparound porch telling stories of decades past. Edward hadn't visited this place since Thomas's passing, but now he found himself drawn back by the threads of a mystery he couldn't ignore. The salt air carried memories of happier times, of Sarah reading on the porch swing, of Thomas's laughter echoing across the bay. Marcus's car pulled up behind his, gravel crunching under the tires. The investigator had spent the past week piecing together Maria Martinez's history, and what he'd discovered had brought them here, to where it all began. The caretaker confirmed it, Marcus said, joining Edward on the porch. Maria worked here during the summer of 2011. She was part of the cleaning staff, but there are records of her helping with special events too, including Thomas's 25th birthday party. Edward's hand traced the porch railing, feeling the familiar grooves. In the wood. Sarah always said Thomas was different that summer, happier. I was too focused on business to notice, but she knew something had changed in him. Inside, the house was like a time capsule. Sheets covered the furniture, but Edward could still picture every detail as it had been. He made his way to Thomas's old room, where a trunk of his son's belongings remained untouched. With trembling hands, he lifted the lid. Among the items inside was a small leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. Edward had never allowed himself to read it before, respecting his son's privacy even after his passing. But now, answers seemed to leap from the pages. Maria understands me in a way no one else does. Father wants me to take over the company, to follow in his footsteps, but with her I can be myself. She doesn't care about the Montgomery name or fortune. She sees me, just me. The entries continued, telling a story of secret meetings, shared dreams, and plans for a future together. But then came the final entry, dated just days before Thomas announced he was leaving for a business trip in Europe. Father would never accept us. His world is all about appearances, about maintaining the family legacy. Maria deserves better than a life of scrutiny and judgment. I have to let her go, but I'll make sure she's taken care of. The locket will be my promise. That what we shared was real. Edward sank into a dusty chair, the weight of his past decisions crushing him. He had pushed Thomas toward a life of business and social obligations, never considering what his son truly wanted. And now Sophia, the granddaughter he never knew existed, was caught in a dangerous web because of his blindness to Catherine's true nature. Meanwhile, in a sleek office building across town, Catherine sat across from a man whose very presence made her skin crawl. James Blackwood, Jay in her messages, leaned back in his leather chair, his cold eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. "You're getting soft, Catherine," he said, his voice smooth as poison. "The girl needs to be dealt with. We've come too far to let a child ruin everything." Catherine gripped the arms of her chair. "She's just a girl, James. This wasn't part of our agreement." "Our agreement?" James laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. "Let me remind you of our agreement. You do exactly what I say, or those documents showing your involvement in the Carlton scandal go public. How long do you think you'd last in prison?" The mention of the Carlton case made Catherine's blood run cold. It had been her first job for James, before she understood the full extent of his operations. By the time she realized what she'd gotten involved in, it was too late to back out. "Edward Montgomery ruined me," James continued, standing to look out over the city skyline. "He took everything I built, destroyed my reputation, left me with nothing. This isn't just about money anymore, it's about justice. And you, my dear, are going to help me get it." Catherine thought of Edward's kind eyes, of the genuine love he'd shown her. For the first time in years, she had found someone who made her want to be better. But James had evidence that could destroy her, and the weight of her past choices felt like chains around her neck. Back at the summer house, Edward discovered a hidden compartment in Thomas's desk. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to "My child." With shaking hands, he opened it, finding a letter his son had written but never delivered. To my unborn child, if you're reading this, then your mother, Maria, has finally told you about me. I hope you can forgive my absence in your life. Know that leaving your mother was the hardest decision I ever made. I thought I was protecting her from my world, but perhaps I was just a coward, afraid to stand up to expectations that now seem meaningless. The locket I gave your mother belonged to my mother, Sarah. It represents the best parts of our family, not the wealth or the name, but the love and strength that runs in our blood. I hope it finds its way to you someday. With all my love, your father, Thomas Montgomery. Sophia's small bedroom was bathed in afternoon sunlight as she carefully arranged the contents of her mother's diary on her bed. Each piece of paper, every photograph told part of a story she was only beginning to understand. The silver locket around her neck felt heavier now, weighted with the knowledge of its true significance. A soft knock at her door made her jump. Marcus Kane entered, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression that suggested new discoveries. "Sophia, I need to show you something," he said, sitting beside her on the bed. "We found more information about your father." He pulled up an image. On the tablet, a newspaper article about Thomas Montgomery's work investigating corporate fraud. He was looking into some very dangerous people before his accident. Sophia's eyes widened as she recognized a face in one of the accompanying photographs. "That man, he used to visit Miss Wells. I saw him through the window when I was waiting. For Mom after work." Marcus enlarged the image. James Blackwood's younger face stared back at them, standing beside Thomas at a charity event. "Are you sure it's him?" "Positive," Sophia nodded. "Mum got really upset when she saw him. That was the night she started writing everything down." Across town, Edward sat in his study, reviewing the evidence Marcus had gathered. Financial records showed a complex web of transactions linking James Blackwood to Catherine through various shell companies. But it was the connection to Thomas's accident that made his heart race. Phone records showed multiple calls between Blackwood and the mechanic who had last serviced Thomas's car. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Catherine entered, wearing a simple blue dress that reminded him of when they first met. For a moment, he almost forgot everything he had learned, almost believed in the illusion of their love. "Edward," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant." The words hit him like a physical blow. Edward stared at her, searching for signs of deception, but her eyes held genuine fear and uncertainty. "Are you sure?" he managed to ask, his mind reeling with the implications. Catherine nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I found out last week. I wanted to wait for the right moment to tell you, but with everything that's happening..." She placed a hand protectively over her stomach. "I'm scared, Edward, not just for myself anymore." The revelation complicated everything. Edward thought of Thomas, of the grandchild he had never known. Now fate was offering him another chance at family, but wrapped in a web of lies and manipulation. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Emergency, Sophia's apartment broken into. She's safe with me, but someone's getting desperate." Edward's jaw clenched. Whether Catherine's pregnancy was real or another manipulation, he couldn't let anyone harm Sophia. The girl was his last connection to Thomas, and she had risked everything to warn him. "Catherine," he said carefully, "if someone was threatening you, forcing you to do things you didn't want to do, you could tell me. I would protect you." She flinched as if struck, tears spilling onto her cheeks. For a moment, the careful mask she wore cracked, revealing genuine anguish beneath. "You don't understand what he's capable of, what he's already done." "Try me," Edward replied, his voice gentle but firm. Catherine sank into a chair, her composure crumbling. "It started years ago. I was young, desperate. James Blackwood offered me a way out of poverty, but there was a price. He taught me how to charm wealthy men, how to manipulate them. At first it was just about money, but with you..." She looked up, her eyes filled with remorse. "With you it became real. I never meant to fall in love. And Thomas..." Edward's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you know about what happened to my son?" The color drained from Catherine's face. "James, he said Thomas was getting too close to the truth. He was investigating shell companies, following money trails. I didn't know what James planned. I swear, Edward, I didn't know he would... Before she could finish, Edward's security system blared to life. On the monitors, he could see 3 men in dark suits entering through the garden entrance. Leading them was James Blackwood himself, his face twisted in a cold smile. "I'm sorry," Catherine whispered, real terror in her voice. "He must have followed me." "Edward, you don't know what he's capable of. You have to get out of here." Edward Montgomery had faced countless business rivals across negotiating tables, but never had he felt the kind of cold fury that filled him now as James Blackwood strode into his study. The man's expensive suit and polished demeanor couldn't mask the predatory gleam in his eyes. "Edward, old friend," Blackwood said, spreading his arms in mock greeting. "Or should I say almost father-in-law, though I suppose that's not happening now, is it?" Catherine shrank back in her chair, one hand still protectively covering her stomach. Edward moved to stand between her and Blackwood, his voice steady, despite his racing heart. "You're trespassing, James. My security team is already on their way." "Your security team is currently occupied with a situation at the front gate," Blackwood replied smoothly. "Amazing what a few well-placed smoke bombs can accomplish, but don't worry, no one will be seriously harmed yet." Through the study's windows, Edward could see smoke rising from the direction of the main entrance. He had to buy time, keep Blackwood talking until help arrived. "Was that your strategy with Thomas too? Create a distraction before sabotaging his car?" Blackwood's smile faltered slightly. "Thomas was unfortunate collateral damage. He should have stayed focused on running Daddy's company instead of playing detective. But then again, the Montgomery men always did have a weakness for straying from their proper path. Just ask Maria Martinez." The casual mention of Maria's name made Edward's blood boil. "You had her eliminated too, didn't you? When she discovered the truth about Thomas's accident?" "Maria was an unfortunate loose end," Blackwood shrugged. "She should have kept cleaning houses instead of poking around in matters that didn't concern her. But her daughter, now that's proving to be a more persistent problem." Catherine suddenly stood, her face pale but determined. "Leave Sophia alone, James. She's just a child." "A child who knows too much," Blackwood snapped. "And you're becoming a liability, Catherine. Getting pregnant wasn't part of the plan unless..." His eyes narrowed. "Unless that's another one of your little deceptions." Edward watched the interplay between them, seeing the dynamics of their relationship clearly for the first time. Catherine wasn't just Blackwood's accomplice. She was another of his victims, trapped in a web of manipulation and blackmail. The sound of breaking glass from somewhere in the mansion made them all jump. Blackwood's men were searching the house, looking for something. Edward had a sinking feeling he knew what it was. "Maria's diary," Blackwood said, confirming Edward's fears. "Where is it?" "Safe," Edward replied, along with copies of all the evidence she gathered. Evidence that links you not only to Thomas's accident, but to a dozen other corporate sabotage operations. One phone call and it all goes to the FBI. Blackwood's composed facade cracked, revealing the rage beneath. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk your company's reputation by exposing all this." "Try me," Edward challenged. "I've already lost my son. I won't lose my granddaughter too." The word granddaughter made Blackwood laugh. "So you figured it out? Yes, your precious Thomas couldn't resist a summer romance with the help. How disappointed you would have been. The Montgomery heir in love with a maid." "The only disappointment," Edward said quietly, "was in myself for not seeing what really mattered to my son, for caring more about appearances than his happiness, but I won't make that mistake again." Catherine had been slowly moving toward Edward's desk during the confrontation. Now her hand found the silent alarm button hidden beneath the edge. Within seconds, the mansion's internal security system activated, steel shutters sliding down over the windows. Blackwood's smile vanished as he realized he was trapped. His men could be heard shouting in confusion from other parts of the house. "It's over, James," Edward said. "The police are on their way, and this time there won't be any accidents or convenient disappearances to hide behind." But Blackwood wasn't finished. He pulled a phone from his pocket, his thumb hovering over the screen. "One message, Edward. One message and my men at Sophia's location will ensure she joins her mother in permanent retirement. Now shall we discuss terms? Catherine moved with unexpected speed, knocking the phone from Blackwood's hand. It skittered across the floor as chaos erupted in the study. Blackwood lunged for Catherine, but Edward intercepted him, years of pent-up rage fueling his actions as both men crashed into the antique desk. In the chaos that followed, Catherine proved she wasn't the delicate socialite she'd pretended to be. As Edward and Blackwood grappled, she snatched Blackwood's fallen phone and quickly accessed it, her fingers flying over the screen. "Your men won't be hurting anyone," she announced, her voice steady. "I just sent them new orders using your own command codes. Amazing what you can learn when someone trusts you enough to share their passwords during intimate moments." Blackwood's face contorted with fury. "You little—" "Choose your next words carefully," Edward warned, maintaining his grip on the struggling man. "Your empire's already crumbling, James. Don't make it worse." The sound of sirens filled the air, growing closer. Catherine's finger hovered over the phone's screen. "Should I forward all your encrypted messages to the FBI, James? The ones about Thomas? About Maria? About all the other accidents you arranged over the years?" "You'll implicate yourself," Blackwood snarled. "I know," Catherine replied quietly. "I've been preparing for that. All the evidence of my involvement has already been compiled and sent to my lawyer, along with a full confession. I'm done running from what I've done." Edward stared at her, seeing yet another layer of complexity in the woman he'd thought he knew. "Catherine, I meant what I said earlier," she told him, tears in her eyes. "I really am pregnant, and I want our child to be born into a world where they can be proud of their mother, where they don't have to live with the weight of lies and manipulation." The police burst into the study, led by Marcus Kane, who had his FBI badge displayed. "James Blackwood," he announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, corporate sabotage, and multiple counts of orchestrating criminal activities." As the officers took Blackwood into custody, Edward turned to Catherine. "Did you know about Thomas and Sophia?" She shook her head. "Not at first, but after Sophia confronted me at the engagement party, I started digging. James had files on everyone he considered a potential threat or leverage point. When I found the connection—" She paused, composing herself. "I realized I couldn't let history repeat itself. I couldn't let another Montgomery child grow up without their family because of James's schemes." Marcus approached them, holding his phone. "Sophia's safe. My team intercepted Blackwood's men before they could reach her. She's asking for you, Edward." The drive to Marcus's safe house gave Edward time to process everything that had happened. Catherine sat silently beside him, her usual confidence replaced by vulnerable uncertainty. "I'll testify," she said suddenly, "about everything. James's operations, the corporate sabotage, my own role in it all. With Maria's diary and my testimony, he'll never hurt another family." Edward studied her profile in the dim light. "And our child? I want them to know their grandfather," she said softly, "and their cousin Sophia. If you can ever forgive me enough to allow that." The safe house was a modest suburban home, unremarkable except for the unmarked police cars parked outside. As they approached the door, it flew open and Sophia ran out. She stopped short when she saw Catherine, but her eyes were fixed on Edward. "Is it true?" she asked, her mother's locket glinting in the porch light. "Are you really my grandfather?" Edward knelt down to her level, seeing Thomas's eyes looking back at him. "Yes, Sophia, and I promise you no one will ever separate our family again." Sophia's gaze shifted to Catherine, who stood awkwardly behind Edward. "And the baby? Will it be my cousin?" Catherine touched her stomach gently. "Yes, and I promise you, Sophia, this baby will grow up knowing only truth and love. No more secrets, no more lies." The young girl considered this, wisdom beyond her years in her expression. Then slowly, she reached for Catherine's hand. "Mom always said everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry. Are you? Truly sorry?" "More than you can ever know," Catherine whispered, tears falling freely now. The following weeks transformed the Montgomery mansion from a symbol of wealth and power into the epicenter of a corporate scandal that shook Boston's elite society. As James Blackwood's empire crumbled, Revelations about his decades of manipulation and sabotage dominated headlines. Edward watched from his study as reporters camped outside his gates, hungry for more details about the story that had everything: romance, betrayal, corporate intrigue, and redemption. Catherine had moved into a small apartment near the courthouse, where she spent her days working with prosecutors to build their case against Blackwood. Her morning sickness had become more pronounced, but she faced it alone, refusing the comfort of the luxury she'd once schemed to obtain. The only indulgence she allowed herself was a weekly dinner with Sophia, supervised by Edward and Marcus. "The grand jury convenes next week," Marcus informed Edward, spreading documents across the study's desk. "Catherine's testimony will be crucial. Blackwood's lawyers are already trying to paint her as the mastermind, claiming she manipulated him just like she did her other victims." Edward's jaw tightened. "But the evidence from Maria's diary corroborates everything Catherine's told us," Marcus confirmed. "Maria was thorough. She didn't just document meetings and phone calls, she collected paper trails, photographs, even recorded conversations. She knew someday Sophia might need proof of the truth." Sophia had begun spending weekends at the mansion, slowly claiming the space that should have been hers from birth. Edward found her one afternoon in Thomas's old room, carefully arranging. Framed photographs on the dresser, images of her mother, of Thomas in his younger days, and one particularly precious photo of Thomas and Maria together at the summer house. "Mom kept this hidden in her diary," Sophia explained, touching the image gently. "She said it was taken the day Dad gave her the locket. She told me he was different from other rich people. He saw her as a person, not just the help." Edward sat beside his granddaughter, recognizing the happiness in Thomas's expression. "Your father had a gift for seeing past appearances. I wish I'd understood that when he was alive." "Catherine's trying to be better," Sophia said suddenly, surprising Edward with her insight. "I was so angry at first, but she's not pretending anymore. When she talks to me now, it's real." The eye observation led Edward to reflect on his own transformation. The businessman who had once prioritized appearances and social standing above all else was gone, replaced by a man who understood that true wealth lay in family and truth, no matter how complicated or messy. Later that evening, Edward received an unexpected call from Catherine's doctor. She had fainted during a preparatory meeting with prosecutors and was now in the hospital. Despite his conflicted feelings, Edward found himself rushing to her side. The hospital room was stark and impersonal, making Catherine look smaller and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. When she opened her eyes to find him there, her surprise was genuine. "The baby's fine," she said quickly, one hand protectively covering her stomach. "Just stress and low blood pressure," the doctor said. Edward sat in the visitor's chair, studying her pale face. "You should be taking better care of yourself." "I couldn't keep living in luxury while preparing to testify about how I helped destroy people's lives," she replied. "It didn't feel right." "And punishing yourself helps make things right." Catherine turned to look out the window, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I don't know how to make things right, Edward. Every time I look at Sophia, I think about how James and I almost destroyed another Montgomery family, how I almost became part of destroying your last connection to Thomas. But you didn't," Edward reminded her. "You chose truth over self-preservation. That counts for something." A soft knock interrupted them as Sophia entered with Marcus. She carried a small gift bag, which she placed hesitantly on Catherine's bed. "I made this in art class," Sophia explained. As Catherine reached into the bag, My mom always said that babies need something made with love." Catherine withdrew a hand-knitted baby blanket, simple but made with obvious care. Her hands trembled as she touched the soft yellow yarn. "Sophia, I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Maybe not," Sophia agreed with surprising maturity. "But the baby does, and you're trying to deserve it. That's what matters." The moment was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing. His expression turned grave as he read the message. "Blackwood's lawyers just filed a motion," he announced. "They're claiming Maria Martinez was working with a corporate rival to frame him. They've produced emails suggesting she was paid to spy on him." "That's impossible," Sophia protested. "Mom would never—" "The emails are forgeries," Catherine cut in, her voice stronger despite her physical weakness. "I know, because I helped create similar ones for James in the past. It was one of his favorite tactics, discredit the whistleblower before they can testify." Edward stood, decision made. "Then we'll fight back with the truth, all of it. No more holding back to protect reputations or social standing." The Montgomery summer house blazed with autumn colors as Edward supervised the renovations. Workers moved carefully around the property, restoring the old building to its former glory while preserving its cherished memories. Each improvement felt like a step toward healing, toward reclaiming a place that held both joy and sorrow in its weathered walls. Sophia had taken charge of restoring Thomas's old room, insisting that every detail be preserved. She spent hours arranging his books, photographs, and personal items, creating a space that would help her connect with the father she never knew. The room would remain a sanctuary, but now it would also serve as a bridge between past and future. "The contractors found something behind the wall panel," Marcus reported, joining Edward on the porch. He handed over a dusty metal box that had been hidden in the house's structure. Inside, Edward discovered more pieces of Thomas's life. Letters he'd written but never sent to Maria, detailed notes about the corporate irregularities he'd been investigating, and a small velvet ring box. The engagement ring inside was simple, but elegant, exactly what Maria would have appreciated. He was planning to propose, Edward realized, his voice thick with emotion. Despite everything I said about maintaining the family's social position, he was choosing love. Catherine, now showing clearly in her 6th month of pregnancy, sat in the garden nearby, transcribing Maria's diary entries into official testimony. Her dedication to exposing Blackwood's crimes had become almost obsessive, as if each revealed truth could help atone for her past deceptions. "These entries from the week before Thomas's accident," she called out, her face paling. Maria documented a meeting between Blackwood and the mechanic. She even took photographs. Catherine's hands shook as she held up the images. She had proof all along, but she was waiting for the right moment to expose everything. Sophia emerged from the house, carrying a freshly restored photo album. "Look what I found in Dad's closet," she said, opening it to reveal more photos of Thomas and Maria together. They looked so happy. Edward studied the images, seeing what he'd been blind to years ago, the genuine love between his son and Maria, the same spark he now recognized in Sophia's eyes. They were happy. I was the one who couldn't see past my own prejudices. A commotion at the front gate drew their attention. Harrison, who had insisted on accompanying them to the summer house, approached with a concerned expression. "Sir, there are reporters outside," he reported. "They're asking about tomorrow's hearing. Apparently, Mr. Blackwood's lawyers have made some new claims about Miss Wells's credibility." Catherine stood, unconsciously protective of her growing belly. "They're getting desperate. The forensic analysis proved the emails about Maria were forgeries. Now they're trying to paint me as an unreliable witness because of my pregnancy hormones." "Let them try," Edward said firmly. "The truth doesn't need artificial credibility. It stands on its own." Sophia approached Catherine, holding out one of the newly discovered photographs. It showed Thomas and Maria sitting on the very porch where they now stood, his mother's locket clearly visible around Maria's neck. "You should have this," Sophia said, "for the baby, so they'll know their family's real history. All of it, good and bad." Catherine accepted the photo with trembling hands. "Sophia, I don't know if I'll ever be able to make up for what I almost helped destroy." "Maybe not," Sophia agreed, wisdom beyond her years in her voice. "But that's not what matters anymore. What matters is what we build now." She touched Catherine's stomach gently. "This baby deserves to know all their family's stories, even the hard ones. That's what Mom would have wanted." Edward watched the interaction, marveling at how tragedy and deception had somehow led to this moment of genuine connection. The summer house, once a symbol of his rigid adherence to social status, was becoming a place of healing and redemption. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from the prosecution team. "They've finished analyzing the new evidence from the hidden box," he announced. "Combined with Catherine's testimony and Maria's documentation, it's more than enough to guarantee a conviction." "Blackwood will still fight," Catherine warned. "He has too much to lose to surrender quietly." "Let him fight," Edward replied, his voice firm. "We have something he never understood the value of, the truth about family, about love, about what really matters." As the sun set over the bay, casting long shadows across the porch, Edward looked at the unlikely family gathered around him. Sophia, his granddaughter, who had inherited Thomas's courage and Maria's determination. Catherine, carrying new life and the chance for redemption, and the spirit of his son whose love story would finally be honored rather than hidden. The courthouse steps teemed with reporters on the morning of James Blackwood's trial. Edward guided Sophia and Catherine through the media frenzy, their small group protected by a ring of security personnel. Catherine, now 7 months pregnant, held her head high despite the shouted questions and camera flashes. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Blackwood sat at the defense table, impeccably dressed as always, but his usual confidence showed cracks. His eyes narrowed as Catherine took the witness stand, one hand resting protectively over her pregnant belly. "Miss Wells," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about your first meeting with James Blackwood." Catherine's voice was steady as she recounted her past. "I was working as a waitress, struggling to pay off my mother's medical bills. Mr. Blackwood approached me after my shift, offering what he called an opportunity. He said he could teach me to move in wealthy circles, to secure a better future for myself. And what did this opportunity entail? At first it seemed simple: attend high society events, charm specific targets, gather information, but it escalated. Mr. Blackwood would use the information to manipulate markets, destroy reputations, force business deals." Catherine paused, gathering strength. "When I expressed doubts, he reminded me that he owned me. He had evidence of my involvement in his schemes, enough to ensure I'd never see freedom if I betrayed him." Blackwood's lawyer stood. "Isn't it true, Miss Wells, that you willingly participated in these schemes, that you enjoyed the wealth and power they brought you?" "Yes," Catherine admitted, her honesty surprising the court. "At first I did. I told myself the targets deserved it, that they were just rich people who wouldn't miss the money. But then I met Edward Montgomery, and for the first time, I saw the human cost of what we were doing." In the gallery, Sophia squeezed Edward's hand as Catherine continued her testimony, describing the elaborate plan to infiltrate the Montgomery family. The young girl's grip tightened when Catherine reached the part about Maria Martinez. "Maria discovered the truth about Thomas Montgomery's accident," Catherine explained, tears in her eyes. "She had proof that Mr. Blackwood had orchestrated it. When she confronted him, threatened to expose everything." Catherine's voice broke. "I didn't know he would. I should have warned her, should have helped her escape, but I was too afraid." During a recess, Edward found Sophia sitting in a quiet corridor clutching her mother's locket. "Are you okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Mom knew she was in danger," Sophia said quietly. "That's why she made sure I had all the evidence. Why she made me memorize where to find her diary. She knew she had to protect the truth." Edward pulled his granddaughter close. "Your mother was incredibly brave, just like you." "Catherine is too," Sophia surprised him by saying. "She's scared. I can see it when Mr. Blackwood looks at her, but she's still telling the truth." Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus, who rushed up with urgent news. "We have a problem. Blackwood's people are trying to suppress the new evidence from the summer house. They're claiming it was obtained illegally." Back in the courtroom, Blackwood's legal team launched their attack. "Your Honor, the defense moves to exclude all evidence found at the Montgomery summer house. The search exceeded the scope of the warrant." The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, the evidence was discovered during legal renovations of the property. More importantly, it corroborates Miss Wells's testimony and provides crucial context for Maria Martinez's documentation." As the lawyers argued, Edward noticed Blackwood passing a note to his attorney. The man's expression remained confident, but there was something desperate in his eyes. He was planning something. That evening, at the safe house where Sophia and Catherine were staying, Edward shared his concerns with Marcus. "Blackwood's too calm. He has something in play that we haven't seen yet." Marcus nodded grimly. "My sources say he's liquidating assets, moving money offshore. He's preparing either to run or to launch a counterattack. Or both, Edward mused. What about the safe house security? Doubled with direct lines to local law enforcement. But, Edward, Marcus hesitated. There's something else. We found a series of encrypted messages on Blackwood's seized devices. Once decoded, they revealed communications with someone inside the Montgomery corporate structure. Edward felt his blood run cold. He has another mole in my company? Had, Marcus corrected. The messages stopped just after Catherine's engagement party, but they suggest Blackwood's original plan went far beyond just infiltrating your family. He was positioning for a complete hostile takeover of Montgomery Enterprises. A crash from the kitchen interrupted them. They rushed in to find Catherine clutching the counter, face pale. "The baby," she gasped. "Something's wrong." The hospital corridor echoed with urgent footsteps as medical staff rushed Catherine into the emergency department. Edward paced anxiously while Sophia sat quietly, her mother's locket clasped between her hands like a talisman. Pre-eclampsia, the doctor explained when she finally emerged from Catherine's room. The stress of the trial has caused her blood pressure to spike dangerously. She needs complete bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Inside the room, Catherine lay pale against the white sheets, monitors beeping steadily. "I can't stop now," she protested weakly. "The trial, Blackwood, the baby comes first," Edward said firmly. "The prosecution has your deposition. They can use that if necessary." Sophia approached the bed, placing her small hand over Catherine's. "Mom always said that protecting family was more important than anything else. That's why she left her diary for me to find." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this kindness, not after everything." "Healing takes time," Sophia said, wisdom beyond her years in her voice. "But it has to start somewhere." Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "Edward, we need to talk, now." In the hallway, Marcus showed Edward his tablet. "Blackwood's made his move. He's filed an emergency injunction claiming Catherine is mentally unstable due to her pregnancy. He's trying to have her entire testimony thrown out." "That's absurd," Edward growled. "It gets worse," Marcus continued. "His lawyers are suggesting that Catherine orchestrated everything. The corporate espionage, the manipulation of Thomas, even Maria's unfortunate passing, and is now trying to frame Blackwood to save herself. But the evidence, they're claiming she planted it all, using her intimate knowledge of both you and Blackwood to create a convincing narrative." Marcus lowered his voice. "And they have a surprise witness, someone from Catherine's past, who's willing to testify that she's done this before." Edward felt his fury rising. So this was his backup plan. If he goes down, he'll drag Catherine with him, ensuring the truth stays buried. "There's more," Marcus said, showing him another document. "My team just decoded more of Blackwood's encrypted messages. He wasn't working alone. There's someone else, someone powerful pulling strings behind the scenes." Before Edward could respond, alarms began blaring from Catherine's room. They rushed back in to find her in distress, the baby's heart monitor showing irregular patterns. "The baby's in distress," a nurse announced. "We need to prepare for an emergency C-section." "No," Catherine pleaded. "It's too early." Sophia squeezed her hand. "The baby will be fine. You both will. I just know it." As medical staff rushed around them, Edward's phone buzzed with an urgent message from his corporate security team. Someone had breached the company's main servers, accessing highly sensitive files. "It's happening," Marcus said grimly. "Blackwood's launching his endgame. While everyone's distracted by Catherine's condition and the trial, his real plan is unfolding." Edward stood torn between the unfolding crisis with Catherine and the threat to his company. Sophia, seeing his dilemma, spoke up. "Go," she said firmly. "I'll stay with Catherine. Mom taught me that sometimes you have to fight on multiple fronts to protect what matters." Catherine reached for Edward's hand. "In my apartment, hidden compartment behind the bathroom mirror, there's a USB drive. Everything I ever gathered on Blackwood's real partner, all the connections, it's all there." "You kept evidence from us?" Marcus asked sharply. Insurance, Catherine whispered, wincing through another wave of pain. In case something like this happened. The password. It's the date Thomas gave Maria the locket. Sophia knows it. Sophia nodded, understanding flowing between her and Catherine. I'll tell them where to look for the rest, too. Mom didn't just keep one diary. She kept backups, hidden where only someone who knew her would think to look. Edward squeezed Catherine's hand. Hold on, both of you, I'll end this tonight. As he rushed from the hospital with Marcus, Edward's phone lit up with another alert. Security cameras had caught someone accessing the executive floor of Montgomery Enterprises. Someone using an old access code that only a handful of people would know. The mole, Marcus said. They're making their move. Edward's jaw set with determination. Then it's time we spring our own trap. Blackwood thinks he's orchestrating the final act, but he forgot something crucial. What's that? The Montgomery family protects its own, Edward said, thinking of Sophia's strength, of Catherine's redemption, of Maria's foresight, of Thomas's love. And we're done playing defense. The executive floor of Montgomery Enterprises was eerily quiet as Edward and Marcus emerged from the private elevator. Emergency lights cast long shadows through the darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing against marble floors. Security cameras show someone's still here, Marcus whispered, checking his tablet. They're in the main server room. Edward moved silently toward his office, remembering countless late nights spent here with Thomas, teaching him the family business. Now those memories took on a darker shade. Had they been watched even then? Had Blackwood's puppet master been pulling strings for years? Inside his office, Edward quickly accessed a hidden wall safe behind an abstract painting. The safe had been installed by his father, its existence known only to Montgomery family members. Inside lay a thick folder labeled Contingency, Documentation. Thomas had compiled before his accident. Thomas knew, Edward said softly, scanning the papers. He wasn't just investigating corporate irregularities. He'd discovered a pattern going back decades. Look at this. Marcus studied the documents. These transactions, they're all connected to shell companies owned by Richard Sterling, Edward's oldest friend and business partner. The betrayal hit like a physical blow, but suddenly everything made sense. Richard had always been there, offering advice, steering, decisions, playing the role of loyal confidant while orchestrating the Montgomery family's gradual destruction. A noise from the server room interrupted their discovery. Through the glass walls, they could see a figure working at the main terminal. As they watched, Richard Sterling himself emerged from the shadows, speaking quietly into a phone. "It's done," they heard him say. "By morning, Montgomery Enterprises will be in chaos. Edward's too distracted by the trial and his precious new family to stop it." Edward's hands clenched into fists, but Marcus held him back. "Wait," he whispered. "We need to hear everything." "Blackwood played his part perfectly," Richard continued into the phone. "The fool actually thought he was the mastermind, as if I'd trust him with the real plan after he botched Thomas's removal so badly." Edward's blood ran cold. Richard had been behind everything. Thomas's accident, Maria's unfortunate passing, the attempts to destroy Sophia, his own friend, a man he'd trusted for decades. "The girl's evidence won't matter once these transactions go through," Richard was saying. "The company will be in ruins, and Edward will be too busy fighting criminal charges to stop us. Catherine's testimony will be worthless once our witness paints her as an unstable con artist." Edward had heard enough. He stepped into the server, room Marcus close behind. "Hello, Richard." Sterling spun around, his composed facade cracking for just a moment before his usual smooth smile appeared. "Edward, I was just reviewing some security protocols given the recent breaches." "Save it," Edward said coldly. "I know everything. Thomas knew too, didn't he? That's why he had to be eliminated." "Thomas was weak," Richard spat, his mask finally falling away. "Just like you. The Montgomery Empire should have been mine decades ago, when your father chose you to lead instead of me." "My father?" Edward's mind raced back to his childhood, remembering how Richard had always been there, like an unofficial member of the family. "He was a fool too," Richard snarled. I dedicated my life to this company, learned every aspect of the business, but he chose you, his precious son, over real talent. So I decided to take what should have been mine, piece by piece, by destroying innocent lives, by having my son killed. Thomas was becoming a problem, too idealistic, too interested in corporate ethics, just like his father. Richard's laugh was bitter. But he did provide one useful thing. That summer, romance with the maid. It gave me the perfect pressure point, the perfect way to control the narrative. Marcus moved to block the exit as Richard took a step backward. It's over, Sterling. We have everything. Thomas's evidence, Maria's diaries, Catherine's testimony, and now your own confession. Do you really think it'll be that easy? Richard's hand moved to his pocket. I've spent decades building this plan. I own judges, regulators, media outlets. By morning, the evidence will show that you orchestrated everything, Edward. A desperate attempt to frame an innocent friend and save your criminal fiancé. Edward took a step forward, his voice hard, as steel. You forgot something, Richard. Something crucial that Thomas understood, that Maria protected, that Sophia embodies. And what's that? The truth always finds its way to light, and the Montgomery family protects its own. At that moment, the lights blazed on. FBI agents poured into the room, led by a familiar face, Harrison, Edward's butler, now revealing his true identity as a longtime federal investigator. Richard Sterling, Harrison announced, his cultured butler's voice replaced by authoritative tones. You're under arrest for conspiracy, corporate fraud, and orchestrating criminal activities. Richard lunged for the computer terminal, desperate to complete his sabotage, but Marcus was faster. In seconds, Sterling was in handcuffs, his decades-long plan crumbling around him. This isn't over, Edward, he snarled as agents led him away. You'll never prove anything. Edward's phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. Catherine's in surgery, the baby. You need to come quickly. The hospital waiting room was a stark contrast to the dramatic scene Edward had just left. Sophia sat curled in a chair, her mother's locket clutched tightly in her hands, while doctors and nurses moved purposefully through the corridors. They took her for an emergency C-section, Sophia explained, as Edward sat beside her. The baby's heart rate kept dropping. They said something about the umbilical cord. Edward wrapped an arm around his granddaughter, marveling at her strength. In the past months, this young girl had faced more challenges than most adults, yet she remained resilient, compassionate, determined to protect her expanding family. Did you get the evidence? She asked quietly. The USB drive from Catherine's apartment? Edward nodded. That and more. Richard Sterling was behind everything. He was using Blackwood as a front, while he orchestrated the real plan. Sophia's eyes widened. Uncle Richard, but he always seemed so nice. The best deceivers usually do, Edward said gently. But it's over now. The FBI has him in custody, along with all the evidence, including the files your mother collected. A doctor emerged from the surgical wing, still wearing her scrubs. Mr. Montgomery, you might want to come with me. Edward's heart raced as he followed the doctor, Sophia's small hand clasped tightly in his. They were led to a private room where Catherine lay, pale but conscious, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. It's a girl, Catherine whispered as they entered. She's small, but the doctors say she's strong. Sophia approached the bed cautiously, peering at her new cousin. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and as she opened her eyes, Edward saw a familiar determination in her gaze. She looks like the photos of Dad, Sophia observed. Same eyes. Catherine's tears fell freely. I want to name her Maria, to honor the woman who protected the truth, who gave us Sophia. She looked uncertainly at Edward. If that's okay. Edward felt his own eyes growing wet. It's perfect. A knock at the door revealed Marcus and Harrison, or rather Agent Harrison as he was now known. Sorry to interrupt, Marcus said, but there are some developments you need to know about. While Sophia stayed with Catherine and baby Maria, Edward stepped into the hallway to hear the update. Sterling's talking, Harrison reported, trying to cut a deal. He's implicated dozens of conspirators, including several high-ranking executives and judges. The whole corrupt network is unraveling. And Blackwood? Facing multiple life sentences, Marcus confirmed. Between Catherine's testimony, Maria's evidence, and Sterling's confession, he's finished. They all are. Edward leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of decades of manipulation and betrayal finally lifting. Thomas would be proud, he said quietly. He saw the corruption, tried to fight it, and in the end, his love story with Maria gave us the key to uncovering everything. Back in the room, they found Sophia carefully placing her mother's locket around baby Maria's bassinet. For protection, she explained. Mom always said it was more than just jewelry. It was a symbol of love being stronger than greed. Catherine reached for Edward's hand. I know I can never fully make up for my part in all this, but I promise you, and Thomas, and Maria, that this baby will grow up knowing the true value of family. We all will, Edward replied, looking at the unlikely family gathered in the room. His granddaughter, wise beyond her years, the woman who had entered his life as a deceiver but found redemption through truth. And now this tiny new life, representing hope and renewal. The morning sun began to peek through the hospital windows, casting a warm glow over the scene. Outside, news was breaking about the arrests, about the corruption exposed at the highest levels of Boston society. But in this quiet room, surrounded by the people he loved, Edward understood what Thomas had known all along, that true wealth had nothing to do with money or power, and everything to do with the bonds of trust and love that held families together. Sophia climbed carefully onto the bed, letting baby Maria grip her finger. Mom would be happy, she said softly, not just because the bad people are caught, but because we're all together. That's what she wanted most, for the truth to bring people together, not tear them apart. Catherine kissed her daughter's forehead, then looked up at Edward with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me the chance to be part of this truth. The weeks following baby Maria's birth brought dramatic changes to the Montgomery household. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and power, transformed into a warm family home filled with the sounds of new life. Edward had Sophia's belongings moved from the safe house into Thomas's old room, while Catherine and the baby occupied a newly renovated suite nearby. The media frenzy surrounding Richard Sterling's arrest and subsequent revelations had begun to quiet, replaced by detailed coverage of the sweeping reforms in Boston's corporate landscape. Edward watched from his study as another news report detailed the extent of Sterling's corruption. The investigation has uncovered decades of manipulation, the reporter announced. Richard Sterling's network extended into every major financial institution in the city. Sources say his confession has led to over 30 high-profile arrests. Sophia entered the study, carrying baby Maria with careful pride. At 2 weeks old, the infant already showed signs of the Montgomery determination in her dark eyes. Catherine's awake, Sophia reported. She wants to know if you'll join us for breakfast in the sunroom. She's feeling strong enough to come downstairs today. Edward smiled, taking his new granddaughter into his arms. Of course. Has Marcus called with any updates? He's coming by later, Sophia nodded. He said something about final preparations for the memorial. The memorial had been Edward's idea, a way to honor both Thomas and Maria Martinez, bringing their love story into the light after years of secrecy. The summer house would be transformed into a charitable foundation, providing educational opportunities for underprivileged youth. In the sunroom, Catherine sat in a comfortable chair, looking stronger than she had since the birth. Motherhood suited her, softening the sharp edges left by years of survival under Blackwood's control. The lawyers called, she said, as Edward settled Maria into her bassinet. They've finished processing my immunity deal. In exchange for my testimony, I'll serve no jail time, but all my assets will be seized and redistributed to Blackwood's victims. How do you feel about that? Edward asked gently. Catherine smiled, watching Sophia arrange flowers in a vase nearby. Relieved, actually. I don't want anything from that life. Everything I need is right here. Harrison, still technically Edward's butler despite his revealed FBI status, entered with breakfast. Sir, Miss Sophia, Miss Catherine, there's something you should see. He handed Edward a tablet displaying security camera footage from the prison where Blackwood was being held. The former mastermind looked broken, his expensive suits replaced by prison orange, his confident smirk erased by the reality of his situation. "He's agreed to a full confession," Harrison reported, "not just about his own crimes, but about every detail of Sterling's operation. The prosecutor says it's the final nail in the coffin." Sophia paused in her flower arranging. "Does this mean it's really over?" "The criminal cases, yes," Harrison nodded. "But there's something else. During his confession, Blackwood revealed the location of some of your mother's personal effects that were taken after her passing. We've recovered them." He produced a small box, which Sophia opened with trembling hands. Inside lay photographs, letters, and a small diary different from the one they'd found before. "Mum's personal journal," Sophia whispered, tears in her eyes. "She used to write in it every night." Catherine moved to sit beside her, one arm wrapping around the girl's shoulders. "Would you like to read it together?" Sophia looked up at her, then at Edward, including them both in this intimate moment. "Yes, I think Mum would want that. She always said that sharing stories was how families heal." As Sophia began to read aloud from her mother's journal, Edward watched his unlikely family with a full heart. Catherine, once an agent of destruction, now cradled her daughter while offering comfort to the girl she had once seen as a threat. Sophia, wise beyond her years, shared her mother's private thoughts with the very people she had once fought to expose. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the scene with a warm glow. Baby Maria stirred in her bassinet, letting out a small sound that brought smiles to everyone's faces. "Listen to this," Sophia said, turning a page in the journal. "Mom wrote about the day Dad gave her the locket. She said she knew it was goodbye, but she never felt like it was the end of their story. She wrote, 'Love like this doesn't end. It transforms, it grows. It finds new ways to bring people together.'" Edward touched the frame of a newly hung photograph, Thomas and Maria at the summer house, their happiness forever captured in that moment. She was right. Their love story didn't end. It led us here to this new chapter. Harrison discreetly announced that Marcus had arrived with the final plans for the Memorial Foundation. The blueprints showed the summer house transformed, but preserving its essential character, much like the family itself. The summer house grounds were transformed for the memorial dedication ceremony. White chairs dotted the lawn, and photographs of Thomas and Maria hung in the restored gazebo where they had spent so many secret moments together. The afternoon sun sparkled off the bay, creating a backdrop that seemed to shimmer with possibility. Edward stood at a podium before the gathered crowd, which included many of Boston's most prominent citizens, those who had remained untouched by Sterling's corruption. But the most important attendees sat in the front row: Sophia, wearing her mother's locket, Catherine holding baby Maria, and several of Maria Martinez's former co-workers who had come to honor their friend's memory. "Today, we're not just dedicating a building," Edward began, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "We're honoring a love story that transformed lives. My son Thomas and Maria Martinez showed us that true connection transcends social boundaries, that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the courage to follow your heart." He gestured to the restored summer house behind him. "The Thomas and Maria Montgomery Foundation will provide educational opportunities for young people who, like Maria, have the determination to chase their dreams. Every year we'll select students who show that same spirit of courage and integrity that Maria demonstrated when she stood up to protect the truth." Sophia approached the podium, her young voice clear and strong. "My mother always told me that love was more powerful than fear. She proved it by protecting the evidence that would eventually expose years of corruption, but more importantly, she proved it by raising me to believe in truth and justice." Catherine stood next, baby Maria, calm in her arms. "I came to the Montgomery family as a deceiver, but I found redemption through the very truth I was sent to destroy. This foundation will stand as proof that it's never too late to choose a better path." The ceremony continued with the official ribbon cutting, but the most powerful moment came afterward, when the guests were invited inside. The summer house's rooms had been carefully restored, with areas dedicated to both Thomas and Maria's memories. In Thomas's old room, now a study center, his investigation notes were displayed alongside Maria's diaries, their separate quests for truth, finally. United, a small group gathered in the kitchen, where Maria had first caught Thomas's eye while working as part of the summer staff. Catherine ran her hand along the counter where Maria had once prepared meals. "I wish I had known her," she said softly to Sophia. "Your mother was incredibly brave." "She would have forgiven you," Sophia replied with certainty. She wrote about redemption in her journal, about how everyone deserves the chance to become better. Edward watched the interaction from the doorway, marveling at how tragedy and deception had led to this moment of genuine connection. Harrison appeared at his side, no longer playing the role of butler but standing as the friend he had become. "The FBI's investigation is officially closed," Harrison reported. "Sterling and Blackwood will spend the rest of their lives in prison. Their network is completely dismantled. And the company, Montgomery Enterprises, is emerging stronger than ever. The transparency measures you've implemented are being hailed as a new standard in corporate governance." Edward nodded, but his attention was drawn to baby Maria, who had begun to fuss. Sophia immediately moved to take her cousin, displaying the natural care that reminded him so much of her mother. "The real victory isn't in the courtroom or the boardroom," Edward observed. "Site you'll fight it is. It's right here in this house with this family." Later, as the sun began to set, the immediate family gathered on the porch. The caterers had gone, the guests had departed, and a peaceful quiet settled over the property. Sophia had fallen asleep, on a wicker couch, her mother's journal open in her lap. Catherine sat in a rocking chair humming softly to baby Maria, while Edward stood at the railing, looking out over the bay. "I've been thinking," Catherine said quietly, careful not to wake Sophia, "about names and identity." Edward turned to her, questioning. "Maria deserves both her parents' names," Catherine continued. "I'd like to legally change her name to Maria Montgomery Wells, to honor both where she came from and where she's going." Edward felt tears prick his eyes. "I think that's perfect." Sophia stirred, blinking awake. "Mum would like that," she said sleepily. "She always said names tell our stories." The last light of day painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, reflecting off the water like nature's own celebration. Edward looked at his family, not the one he had imagined months ago when planning his engagement to Catherine, but the one that truth and love had built from the ashes of deception. The autumn leaves painted the Montgomery estate in brilliant shades of red and gold as life settled into a new normal. 3 months had passed since the foundation's dedication, and the mansion had transformed from a symbol of power into a true home, filled with the sounds of family life. Edward sat in his study, reviewing applications for the foundation's first scholarship recipients. Sophia had insisted on being part of the selection committee, bringing her unique perspective to each candidate's story. She sat across from him, now carefully reading through an essay written by a young girl whose mother worked as a housekeeper. "This one reminds me of Mum," Sophia said, looking up from the papers. "She writes about wanting to make a difference, about not letting circumstances define her future." "Put it in the finalist pile," Edward smiled, watching his granddaughter's methodical approach to the task. She had inherited both Thomas's sense of justice and Maria's attention to detail. A soft knock interrupted their work. Catherine entered, baby Maria cradled in one arm, while she balanced a tray of tea with the other. At 3 months old, Maria was thriving, her dark eyes taking in the world with the same quiet intensity that had characterized her namesake. "The lawyers called," Catherine announced, setting down the tray. "Sterling's appeals have all been denied. The judge cited the overwhelming evidence from Maria's diaries and Thomas's investigation." Edward watched as Sophia automatically reached for her baby cousin, the bond between them growing stronger each day. "And Blackwood, cooperating fully with the authorities," Catherine replied, her voice steady despite the mention of her former manipulator. "His testimony has led to more arrests in other cities. The whole network is crumbling." The baby gurgled happily in Sophia's arms, reaching for the locket that still hung around her cousin's neck. Sophia carefully let the infant grasp the silver pendant, smiling at the connection between past and present. "I found more photos in Mom's journal yesterday," Sophia said. "There's one of Dad teaching her to dance right here in this study. She wrote that he said every proper businesswoman should know how to waltz." Edward's heart tightened at the memory. He had once caught Thomas and Maria dancing here late one summer evening, but had turned away, too bound by social conventions to acknowledge the beauty of their love. "Your father was right," he said softly. "Though I didn't understand it then. He saw beyond the artificial barriers I helped maintain." Catherine moved to the window, watching leaves dance across the lawn. "I've been thinking about barriers," she said, "about how we build them to protect ourselves but end up trapping ourselves instead." "Like the walls you built working for Blackwood?" Sophia asked with her characteristic directness. "Yes," Catherine nodded, turning back to face them. "I thought I was being strong, being clever, but real strength is what your mother showed, standing up for truth even when it's dangerous. Baby Maria chose that moment to let out a demanding cry, bringing smiles to everyone's faces." Sophia handed her back to Catherine, who settled into a comfortable chair to nurse her daughter. "I want to tell you both something," Catherine said as she cradled the baby. "I've decided to go back to school. The foundation is offering adult education programs, and I want to earn a legitimate business degree. No more shortcuts, no more deceptions." Edward felt pride swell in his chest. "That's wonderful, Catherine. I want to help run the foundation," she continued, "to use what I learned about corporate manipulation to help prevent it from happening to others. If you'll trust me with that." Sophia reached over and squeezed Catherine's hand. "Mom wrote in her journal that trust isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do to make things right afterward." Edward watched the interaction, marveling at how wisdom could flow from such unexpected sources. The investigation files spread across his desk seemed less important now compared to the scene before him. 3 generations of healing, of learning, of growing together. Harrison appeared in the doorway, maintaining his butler's role despite his revealed FBI status. "Sir, Marcus Kane is here with the final report on the company restructuring." "Show him in," Edward nodded, but not before sharing a knowing look with Sophia. The girl had developed quite a talent for corporate governance, often seeing patterns in financial reports that even experienced advisors missed. "Should I go?" Catherine asked, beginning to rise. "No," Edward said firmly. "You're family now, and in this family we face everything together." Marcus entered the study carrying a thick folder emblazoned with the Montgomery Enterprises logo. His usual businesslike demeanor softened at the sight of baby Maria, who had fallen asleep in Catherine's arms. "The restructuring is complete," he reported, spreading documents across Edward's desk. "Every trace of Sterling's influence has been removed from the company. The new transparency measures are already attracting positive attention from ethical investment funds." Sophia leaned forward, her interest piqued. "What about the employee assistance program Mom wrote about in her diary?" "The one Dad wanted to implement." "Actually," Edward smiled, "that's our next project. Thomas had drafted detailed plans for a comprehensive support system for all employees, regardless of their position. It was in the files we found at the summer house." Catherine adjusted her sleeping daughter, her business acumen showing through her maternal care. "We could integrate it with the Foundation's educational programs, create real pathways for advancement, just like Thomas and Maria envisioned." The autumn sun slanted through the study windows, casting a warm glow over the family gathering. Harrison entered with fresh tea and a plate of cookies, Sophia's favorite chocolate chip ones, made from Maria Martinez's recipe that had been found in her personal papers. "There's something else," Marcus said, pulling out a final document. "The FBI has formally closed the investigation into Thomas's accident. With Sterling's confession and the evidence from Maria's diaries, they've confirmed every detail. The case is officially solved." Edward felt a weight lift from his shoulders, one he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. Sophia slipped her small hand into his, offering silent support. "We should do something," she said after a moment, "to celebrate Dad and Mom's dream finally coming true, even if they're not here to see it." "What did you have in mind?" Catherine asked, recognizing the thoughtful look that meant Sophia was developing one of her plans. "The Foundation's first scholarship ceremony is next month," Sophia began. "What if we made it more than just giving out awards? What if we made..." It a celebration of all kinds of love stories that changed lives? Edward smiled at his granddaughter's insight. A celebration of transformation through love. I think Thomas and Maria would have appreciated that. We could display Mom's journals, Sophia continued, warming to her idea. Not the evidence parts, but her personal writings about believing in change, about how love can bridge any gap, and Dad's business plans that showed how corporate success and social responsibility could work together. Catherine gently stroked her daughter's dark hair. We could establish a special award in Maria's name for employees or students who show exceptional courage in standing up for truth and justice. The Maria Martinez Courage Award, Edward nodded. Perfect. Marcus, who had been taking notes, looked up. The press will want to cover it. This could set a new standard for corporate philanthropy. Let them, Edward said firmly. It's time. The world knew the real story of Thomas Montgomery and Maria Martinez, not as a scandal to be whispered about, but as an example of how love can transform lives and heal wounds. Baby Maria stirred, opening her eyes to gaze at the family gathered around her. Sophia immediately moved to her cousin's side, letting the infant grasp her finger. Look, she said softly. She's smiling. Mom wrote that babies smile when they feel love around them. Catherine blinked back tears. Your mother was very wise. She still is, Sophia replied, through her words, through her example, and now through us, carrying forward what she and Dad believed in. Edward watched his family, the granddaughter who had brought truth to light, the woman who had found redemption through love, and the baby who represented hope for the future. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the leaves, nature's reminder. That change, while sometimes difficult, brought new beauty in its season. Harrison appeared once more. Sir, the architects are here with the final plans for the summer house renovations. Show them in, Edward nodded. This is a family decision after all. As the architects spread their blueprints across the desk, Edward saw not just building plans, but the foundation for a legacy. Every modification to the summer house would preserve the essence of Thomas and Maria's love story while creating space for new stories to unfold. The morning of the first Thomas and Maria Montgomery Foundation Scholarship Ceremony dawned clear and bright. The summer house, now fully renovated, gleamed in the early light. Display cases in the entrance hall showcased carefully selected pages from Maria's journals, alongside Thomas's business proposals and photographs that told their love story. Edward stood in Thomas's old room, now transformed into a study center, but still maintaining touches of his son's presence. Sophia worked beside him, arranging the last of the displays, her mother's locket taking pride of place in a central case. Are you sure you want to display it? Edward asked gently. You've worn it every day since. Sophia smiled, touching the glass. Mom always said important things should be shared. Today, her story will inspire others. The locket belongs here, where everyone can see what it represents. Catherine appeared in the doorway, baby Maria dressed in a tiny formal dress for the occasion. At 6 months old, she had grown into a happy, observant infant who seemed to absorb everything around her. The first guests are arriving, Catherine reported. The scholarship recipients and their families are gathering in the garden. Edward looked out the window at the assembled crowd. 20 young people had been chosen for the Foundation's first class, each selected not just for their academic achievements, but for their demonstrated commitment to truth and justice. Did you finish your speech? He asked Sophia, who had insisted on addressing the gathering. She nodded, patting the pocket of her dress. I'm going to tell them about Mom and Dad. Not just how they found love, but how their love changed everything. How it's still changing things. The ceremony space had been arranged in the garden where Thomas and Maria had shared their secret meetings. Chairs faced a small stage, with the bay providing a stunning backdrop. Photographs of the couple were tastefully displayed, along with quotes from Maria's journals and Thomas's writings. Marcus approached as they made their way to their seats. The press is here, but they're respecting the boundaries we set. This is about the scholars and the Foundation's mission, not sensationalism. Good, Edward nodded. These young people deserve their moment. The ceremony began with Edward's welcome address. Standing at the podium, he looked out at the faces before him. Young people full of promise, their families beaming with pride, and his own unlikely but perfect family. In the front row. Today we celebrate not just academic achievement, but the power of love to transform lives, he began. This foundation was born from a love story, one that taught us that true worth isn't measured by social status or bank accounts, but by the courage to stand for what's right. Sophia took the stage next, her young voice clear and confident. My parents, Thomas Montgomery and Maria Martinez, came from different worlds, but they saw beyond those differences to something more important, the truth that love can bridge any gap, heal any wound, and light the way forward. As she spoke, sharing carefully chosen stories from her mother's journals, Edward watched the audience. He saw tears in the eyes of the housekeeping staff who had known Maria, saw understanding dawn on the faces of the scholarship recipients who recognized their own struggles in her journey. Catherine's turn at the podium brought a different perspective. I came to the Montgomery family as someone trained to exploit wealth and power, she admitted honestly. But through the legacy of Thomas and Maria's love, I learned that real power lies in truth, in redemption, and in the courage to change. The highlight of the ceremony was the presentation of the Maria Martinez Courage Awards. Each scholarship recipient came forward to receive not just their academic funding, but a small silver locket, replicas of Maria's original, each engraved with her favorite quote, "Truth and love light the way forward." As the young scholars returned to their seats, wearing their lockets proudly, Sophia retrieved her mother's original from the display case. Standing before the crowd again, she held it up. This locket traveled from my grandmother Sarah to my father Thomas to my mother Maria, and then to me, she explained. It witnessed their love story and protected the truth until it could be told. Today it takes its place here, in this house of learning and hope, to remind us all that love is the greatest teacher. She carefully returned the locket to its display, her fingers lingering for a moment on the glass. As she turned back to the audience, baby Maria let out a happy gurgle, breaking the emotional tension and drawing warm laughter from the crowd. The scholarship ceremony transitioned into a celebration of community as guests explored the renovated summer house. Each room told part of the story, from the kitchen where Thomas and Maria first met, to the garden where they shared secret moments, to the study where Thomas had drafted his vision for a more ethical business world. In the main hall, Catherine stood before a wall of photographs, baby Maria balanced on her hip. The images traced the transformation of the Montgomery family, formal portraits from the past giving way to candid shots of Thomas and Maria, leading finally to recent photos of the newly united family. "It's amazing," she said, as Edward joined her, "how love keeps echoing through generations. Looking at these pictures, I see pieces of Thomas in Sophia, pieces of Maria in little Maria here." Edward nodded, watching Sophia lead a group of scholarship recipients through the exhibits. She had inherited her parents' best qualities, Thomas's vision for justice and Maria's unwavering courage. "Miss Sophia is quite the teacher," Harrison observed, appearing with refreshments. "She has her mother's gift for making complex things clear to others." Indeed, Sophia was explaining to the young scholars how her mother had documented everything, teaching them about the importance of standing firm in their convictions. The teenagers listened intently, many touching their new lockets as she spoke. Marcus approached with an elderly gentleman, Judge Peterson, who had overseen both Sterling's and Blackwood's trials. "Edward, the judge has some news he thought you'd want to hear personally." "Sterling and Blackwood's appeals have been denied at every level," the judge reported quietly. "Moreover, their testimonies have led to reform legislation being introduced. In Congress, your family's story is creating ripples far beyond Boston." Edward felt a complex mix of emotions: satisfaction that justice had been served, grief for what had been lost, but mostly gratitude for what had been gained. He watched Catherine showing baby Maria the photographs, pointing out faces and sharing stories. The infant reached toward a picture of Thomas and Maria as if recognizing something in their smiles. "The Montgomery legacy is in good hands," the judge observed, following Edward's gaze. Later, as the afternoon light softened, The family gathered in the garden. The scholarship recipients had gone, clutching their lockets and acceptance letters, but the impact of the day lingered in the air like the scent of roses Maria had once tended. Sophia sat on the garden swing, reading aloud from one of her mother's journals to baby Maria, who watched her cousin with devoted attention. Catherine worked nearby, making notes for her business classes. She had enrolled in the Foundation's adult education program and was excelling in her studies. Mom wrote about this swing, Sophia said, looking up from the journal. Dad used to push her here in the evenings, when everyone else had gone home. She said it felt like they were floating, above all the rules and boundaries that kept them apart. Edward sat beside his granddaughter, the swing creaking softly. Your father understood something I didn't back then, that those boundaries only exist if we choose to believe in them. That's why the Foundation is so important, Catherine added, closing her textbook. It's not just about scholarships. It's about breaking down those artificial barriers, just like Thomas and Maria did. Baby Maria reached for Sophia's journal, her small fingers gentle on the worn pages. She's going to be a reader, Sophia smiled. Just like Mom. Harrison appeared with a camera. Perhaps a photograph to mark the occasion. For the wall. They gathered together on the swing. Edward, Sophia with the journal, Catherine with baby, Maria. As Harrison prepared to take the picture, a breeze stirred the garden, carrying the scent of roses. Sophia touched her cousin's hand to the journal's pages, connecting the baby to her namesake's words. Perfect, Harrison said, capturing the moment. Edward looked at his family, thinking of the long journey that had brought them here. The deceptions had been revealed, the truth had prevailed, but more importantly, love had found its way through the darkness to create something beautiful. Dad would be proud, Sophia said suddenly, not just of the Foundation, but of how we've all become a real family. Catherine hugged her daughter close. Maria would be proud too. Her courage made all of this possible. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, Edward realized that the summer house had become more than a memorial to a past love story. It was now a place where new stories could begin, where truth and love continued to light the way forward. 1 year after the scholarship ceremony, the Montgomery summer house bustled with activity once again. The Foundation's second class of scholars would be announced soon, but today was about family. Sophia's 13th birthday coincided with baby Maria's first, and the house was filled with the joyful sounds of celebration. Edward stood in his favorite spot on the porch, watching the scene unfold in the garden. Sophia, tall and poised for her age, helped her little cousin take tentative steps across the lawn. Catherine, now halfway through her business degree, sat nearby making notes for her thesis on ethical corporate governance. The roses are blooming early this year, Harrison observed, joining Edward with 2 cups of coffee. Maria, the elder, would have been pleased. Edward nodded, accepting the coffee. The garden had been restored according to the detailed notes found in Maria's journals, every flower placement holding meaning. She understood that beauty and purpose could coexist, just like Thomas saw that business success and social responsibility weren't mutually exclusive. Inside, the summer house had evolved while preserving its essential character. The study center bustled with activity most days as scholarship recipients and adult learners pursued their dreams. Maria's locket remained in its place of honor, inspiring visitors with its story of love transcending boundaries. "Grandpa," Sophia called from the garden, "Maria wants to show you something." Edward joined them on the lawn, where little Maria was proudly standing on her own, her dark eyes sparkling with determination. As he watched, she took 3 wobbling steps toward him before falling into his waiting arms. Just like her namesake, Catherine smiled, always moving forward no matter the obstacles. Sophia pulled out her mother's journal. She still read from it regularly, finding new wisdom in its pages. Mum wrote about watching Dad with his business students, how he always encouraged them to take that first step toward their dreams, no matter how uncertain it seemed. The past year had brought many such steps. Catherine had excelled in her studies while developing new programs for the Foundation. Sophia had begun taking business classes alongside her regular schoolwork, showing a natural talent for finding ethical solutions to complex problems. The Montgomery corporate empire, under Edward's new leadership style, had become a model for responsible business practices. Marcus arrived with the afternoon's mail, including a letter that made Edward smile. The Committee for Corporate Ethics has chosen Montgomery Enterprises to receive their annual award for business transformation, he announced. That would make Dad proud, Sophia said, but I think he'd be even prouder of this. She held up a newspaper article about one of their first scholarship recipients who had just started her own ethical investment firm. Harrison began setting up for the birthday celebration, arranging 2 cakes on the garden table, a sophisticated chocolate one for Sophia and a small, colorful one for baby Maria. The contrast reminded Edward of that first night, when a young girl in simple clothes had burst into his engagement party to speak truth to power. Sometimes, he said, gathering his family around the table, the greatest gifts come in unexpected moments of courage. Catherine helped Maria into her high chair, while Sophia arranged 13 candles on her own cake. I've been thinking about courage, Catherine said, about how it comes in many forms. The courage to speak truth like Maria, the courage to fight for justice like Thomas, and the courage to change like all of us have had to do. And the courage to forgive, Sophia added, smiling at Catherine. That's what Mom wrote about most in her later journal entries, how forgiveness can transform pain into possibility. As they sang the birthday songs and watched both girls make their wishes, Edward felt the presence of those who had gone before. Thomas with his vision of ethical business, Maria with her unwavering integrity, Sarah with her legacy of family. Love, their story hadn't ended. It had merely transformed, flowering into something new and beautiful. Little Maria smashed her cake with gleeful abandon, while Sophia opened her presents, including a special one from Catherine, a silver bracelet engraved with Maria's favorite quote about truth and love lighting the way forward. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, its light catching the diamonds of possibility in every dewdrop on the roses. Edward looked at his family, the granddaughter who had brought truth to light, the woman who had found redemption through love, and the baby who carried hope for the future in her smile. In the end, it wasn't about wealth or power or social status. It was about the courage to love authentically, to speak truth fearlessly, and to believe in the possibility of transformation. The Montgomery legacy would continue, not as a tale of corporate dominance, but as a story of love's power, to light the way forward one heart at a time.